All right. I am going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Marquita Riley, and I am the Student Programs Coordinator for SWE Headquarters. And thank you all for joining us today for this live learning opportunity, Techniques for Advocating for Yourself. If you need to ask a question during this webinar, you can type it into the chat below. If you take a look at your GoToWebinar panel, you'll see there are options to do sharing, webcam, audio, your dashboard, pose questions, and there should be an option for you to just see chat, and you can just put your questions there during this session, and then those questions will be answered during the Q&A portion of our session. Please remember that this live session will be recorded. The on-demand recording will be posted in the SWE Next TV Google Classroom for everyone to view from here after the session. It'll be in the folder labeled classwork, and you'll see it under the disciplines that we've labeled for topic discussions, and you'll see it featured under advocating for yourself. So if you want to look there afterwards, that's where it will be made available. After the presentation, we will ask you to complete a poll survey for feedback on this session. It will be located in the chat box, and I'm going to go ahead and add it now, just so you guys can see it, but you won't need to fill that out until after the session is completed. Your speaker today is going to be Dr. Gisella Lamas, who is a lecturer at the University of Kentucky. She will now begin the presentation.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Gisella Lamas. I'm currently living in Paducah, Kentucky, where I work as a lecturer. I have a PhD in environmental engineering by the University of Texas, San Antonio. And some of my SWE activities include being a volunteer for the SWE Next programming group, which is hosting this event for you. I also do some work with the SWE mentoring facilitation work group. And locally, I work with the STEM for Girls, which is our event. So I'm going to go over a few things, like a little bit of background before we start sharing our stories. So let's start with asking you, what grade are you in? So it would be great for you to let us know. If you can use the chat box and tell us so we can have an idea. I know you've done in the pre-survey, but just so you get used to the chat box and talk to us, that'd be great.
Okay. Alrighty. Great. All right. Let's see here. The 11th grade. A nice little. See 9th grade. I see 11th grade.
Oh, okay.
6th grade.
We have 5th grade too.
We do have that in here as well.
Oh, wow, yeah.
6th grade. Yeah, kind of young. Nice. Very
Wow,
nice.
that's great. So now let's go to the next question, which is our main question here today. Have you ever had to advocate for yourself? So please share it in the chat box and tell us so we can look at the results together.
Okay. Okay, so I am going to read off a few. I see Madeline, it says yes. I have Mariah going into her freshman year. I have Connor going to college. Very nice. This is perfect timing. Haley, 6th grade. 9th grade. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Yes, I ran a community service club. I had to advocate for funds and services. Okay. sorry, these are kind of getting mixed up, so I apologize for the confusion. I know you guys are like, why is she reading grade levels? That's not what we're talking about. Yeah, so I had to advocate for funds. This is Ava. She had to advocate for funds to run her club and services. Okay.
Well, that's great. So yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So we had a couple of people that.
Yeah, I want to read maybe one more. Let's see. Do we have one more that we can do? Just one more before we move on?
I think it's later, so it's fine.
Okay, cool.
All right then, so by the end of this event, you'll be able to identify techniques to advocate for yourself in personal and academic environments. So these are some situations in high school, some of you are fifth grade even, where you need to advocate for yourself. And some of them are very common, and some of them we got from your actual pre-survey. So they're basically when you need help from other students or teachers, when you want to join a group, when you want to lead a group or a team, when you want to take subjects you're interested in, when you have to prove something and prove it to somebody, when you start something new, presentations, and that includes building your confidence, and when you have to advocate for your faith, beliefs, backgrounds, and things related to that. So we're going to go a little bit about the background on self-advocacy before we start sharing our stories. So what is self-advocacy? So most of you already know, have experienced it, but it's an important skill that you can develop right now, practice, and get better. It's basically to speak up for yourself so your needs are being met. And who can advocate for yourself? So for those that are 5th, 8th grade, your parents and teachers advocate for you. Those that are between 9 and 12, you can start advocating for yourself right now. But when you get to college, university, and from then on, it generally requires you to advocate for yourself all the time. So when should you start? Start early and practice because it makes it easier, it builds up your confidence, and so it gets a little bit faster and better for you. Why is it important to advocate for yourself? Because we want you to be successful and we want you to be an independent adult. So that is something that you should want for yourself as well. But the whole point of this background is to talk a little bit about not only the facts that I've shown, but also the fears. So now we are going to ask you to interact with us again in the chat box and answer this question. What makes self-advocacy hard? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes for you to share with us. And then I'm going to show some of us that we have actually chosen for it, the most common ones.
Okay. Waiting on those responses.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
It takes a lot of self-confidence. This is Rita. It takes a lot of confidence in order to speak up for what you believe in, especially if others around you disagree with your beliefs. That was one comment. Okay, looking for some more comments. Okay. Yeah, confidence, fear. I see a lot of fear of someone maybe judging your view. That was from Emily. Others may judge you, Luke. Confidence and self, Madeline. Confidence can make your self-advocacy hard. That's Nadaya. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Hopefully I'm not. Yeah. Yeah, so those are pretty similar. So a lot of fear and just maybe fear of people judging you for what you're saying. So
yeah, that's true. Okay, so some of the fears that we can say is that not knowing what to ask, or not believing that we need it, although we deserve something. ashamed to ask for help. Sometimes you don't have the confidence enough. There's nothing wrong about asking somebody for help. Not having the right skills to be an advocate, I think that's what people were talking about it the most. And bad experience from the past. I think that what prevents us from doing the right thing is the bad experiences. But just so you know, all these feelings are normal and everybody goes through them. So we already talked about a little bit everything that is involving self-advocacy, but we are trying to give you the skills so you can actually work on them and make it better. So we have 4 of them for you today, which the first one is to identify your problem. So we as engineers, or you becoming an engineer, we're kind of conditioned to identify problems and try to solve them. So that's the characteristic that you would develop, or if you don't have it naturally. So first of all, problem. There's a problem. Let's try to identify what it is. Let's clarify it. And then 2, we come up with a possible solution. Sometimes solving a problem and then having a solution to it would actually get rid of the problem. Sometimes it doesn't. So we do have to be realistic in that sense. If it doesn't solve the problem, what can we do? Which goes to the third step, which is finding the right ally. Echoing your voice helps you a lot. And then finally, 4, we practice your message. Practice, practice, and practice. Practice makes perfect. So now it's my honor to share some stories here with our panelists. So please type any questions you have into the chat box, and we will answer them after all the panelists have actually presented their stories. So without further ado, we have our first panelist. So Yabesra, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Yabesra. I'm currently a sophomore at Justice High School and I'm interested in programming or computer science. Some activities I've done in the past are VEX robotics and I'm a part and C-Perch. And today I would like to share you some tips that I've learned through participating in STEM. First, I would just like to say humans are social creatures. We learn languages, how to inquire, how to help or harm through social interactions with other people. Unsurprisingly, 30% of women who leave the engineering field blame the job atmosphere for the same reason. Finding a community of girls who can relate to your issue or who have gone through your struggles is really important. I remember my first year of coding, my first coding experience during a competition. It was the first round of the Cyber Patriots competition, and I was struggling with a particular debugging problem. So I asked one of my teammates who had more experience than me. He'd brag about, using his computer all day, and he's been doing this since 3rd grade. And I thought, well, we're in the competition and I need help. So I was struggling and I asked him for help. And he told me, just try to figure it out. I don't have time to help you right now. Can't you see I'm doing something? Basically saying that his work was more important than mine, even though we were competing as a team, which didn't make sense. I didn't understand what a microaggression was at the time, but I did understand it was rude. So I told him straight up, like, that's mean. You shouldn't say that. We're a teammate. You're my teammate. We're trying to work as a group. There's no reason for you not to help me. So I went to my friend and I started complaining about this, and I was like, this is crazy. How could he say this? Like, that is so rude. And she told me, like, hey, you need to calm down. Like, she tried to help me reflect. And because of that, I have some tips that I want to share with you about what I did after this experience. So the first thing was I had gone to my friend and complained about like why this had been an issue, and finding someone like that to take out all of my like much needed to like all the aggression that I had and like the hurt that I had felt was important because it allowed me to hear my thoughts and to say them out loud. Just kind of helped me like picture what was going on. And then when you're talking with friends, typically you end up talking about like issues they faced as well, so that they try to comfort you and then they try to tell you a story about what they faced. And that type of like bond helps you really understand like what was going on. And then I realized that I had gone to get help because I didn't understand something, and it was on me to learn about it. I had to advocate for myself. So since the first round of competitions, we had been really messy. The group was really horrible with communication, and when we knew that there was a problem. I set up goals for myself to learn about the debugging problem I had during the first round of competitions, because it was even a surprise that we got to the second round. And I set up those goals and those self-evaluations for myself. And when I did that, I realized that I would be working long days and I'd be doing unrealistic amount of tasks. So I realized that I needed to create something that was realistic to me. I needed to create a realistic schedule that would allow me to fit in personal time so that I wasn't trying to overwork myself. I kept trying to get better and better and better so that I could be as good as my teammates. And I realized, who am I evaluating myself against? Me or my teammates? And instead, I was evaluating myself against my teammates, which is the wrong person, because at the end of the day, you're trying to be better than the person you were yesterday, not who they are. He had already told me that he's been doing this since third grade, and this was my first year of coding, so there was no way I was going to be just as good within 1 or 2 weeks or even months. So I needed to create self-evaluations that fit with where I started off. I needed to advocate for my own education, but make it reasonable enough that I could, continue the race, continue the marathon, because this is a journey that doesn't really end. And along that journey, it gets really difficult. You'll find obstacles that make you want to give up. There were days where I would just go to my room and just want to cry because it was so hard or something confused me. And so it's really important to find support like mentors, friends, and other things like that. And I think that's why organizations like SWE are so important, just because you have a lot of female role models who've already gone through what you've gone through that can actually talk to you about it, and you can actually relate to them. You can, bounce off ideas with them. You can talk to them about the issues you're going through, and they can give you advice. Or SWE also has a program called the SWE Next community, and in that community there are girls my age in high school who are already interested in engineering, in some form of engineering, and so we can all kind of relate to each other, we can be sympathetic to each other, and because of that we can create bonds through our work, through our studies, and we can really help each other through school. And so finding those connections that will help bring you back up when you're burnt out and tired and you just don't want to continue the race, it's important because they help cheer you on to continue the marathon. This is a long, journey. You don't sprint through it. You don't get to just walk through it. You have to pace yourself at a reasonable pace, and finding people who support you through that is important. That's why I love being a SWE Nexter. And my last and not least point is, like I said, this is a marathon. This is a long journey, and trying to do it all at once is really difficult. So you need to understand, like I said earlier, that you have, a certain amount that you can do at a time, and slowly you get better and better and better. Slowly I got better at debugging, and I got better throughout the competition. And it's difficult if you don't create milestones for yourself. As a group, during the competition for the second round, we knew that we sucked at communication, and so we were like, let's create milestones. We started off with just talking to each other when we did something so that we'd understand what was going on. Then we started creating milestones where if someone were to joke around, or if we talked around for a little bit, that was another milestone. And eventually by the end of the competition, we were all really good friends. And it's important to understand each little milestone is important. So those are my tips for advocating yourself. Find your community, pace yourself, and take your time and have fun with it.
Very good.
Yeah, sorry. So our next panelist, and I'm just gonna go over here. Hold on a second. Sorry, there we go. Now our second panelist is Emily.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you and be on here virtually with you. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I am currently studying electrical engineering at the University of Pittsburgh. I will be a junior in the fall. And this summer, I am participating in my school's co-op program. So it's like an internship program at Pioneer Power Group, which is a startup electrical systems analyst company. So we give studies to companies looking into put new equipment into their buildings. Some sweet activities I've been involved in. So this upcoming year, I'll be vice president of outreach for Pitt SWE, but I've been involved in SWE all the way from high school to now. So I'm really happy and excited to talk to you about advocating for yourself. And the best example I have when I had to advocate for myself took place in my 10th grade year of high school. A little background about my high school: it was very small. We had 82 students in a graduating class. So I was certainly seen as a unique student at my school. A girl who wanted to do science competitions was completely unheard of. Luckily, I was able to convince my gifted teacher and my administration to help me register myself and 4 other students for a statewide innovation challenge named PA Governor's STEM. Our challenge was to come up with an invention that would help Pennsylvanians, and we had to research its impact and then finally make a working prototype. Right away, it became very apparent that I was the most interested in the project out of the whole group, besides one other teammate. Nevertheless, I pushed my team to all compete, and we ended up winning the regional competition with our adaptive keyboard. Now it was time to improve our prototype and presentation before the statewide event. But days before the competition, 3 of my team members decided to drop out of my project. They stayed along outside of schoolwork sessions, numerous day-long research field trips to rehab centers, and finally the large workload as reasons that they couldn't continue. After that, I, as the project manager, and my 1 remaining team member split the workload, overhauled our presentation, and traveled to Harrisburg for the statewide competition. It was a crazy day, but in the end, we won first place. But wait, it gets better. I finally started to see how all of our hard work was paying off, but I knew deep down inside that our project wasn't over. The keyboard that we created that allowed people with fine motor disabilities to type needed to be seen and tested by other people. So the next year, with the encouragement of my family and a little bit of motivating my partner, we signed up for Pittsburgh's International Science Competition's grand prize for regional representatives to ISF, which was held in Los Angeles, California, the year that I went. Competition day came, and in the end, we walked away with an all-expense-paid trip to LA to experience ISF. During this week I was at ISF, I met students and professors from all over the world. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the competition, the year that I competed was featured on Disney Plus in a feature film called Science Fair. So attending this competition would not have been possible if I had not believed in my project and myself. I was so empowered by these 2 years, my 10th and 11th grade year, that I decided my senior year I'd focus my efforts and help start others' love for STEM in my school by founding a SWE Next Club. So that is the reason why I am so honored to talk to you all today about advocating yourselves, because it gives me a full circle moment. And thank you so much for putting on my tips. Here's my tips. So stand strong and believe in yourself, even if your classmates don't stand with me. So my case was a little extreme, with 3 out of 5 team members dropping the project, but it was very important for me as a project manager to stay level-headed and keep going. Seek outside help from your teacher and school administration. So I literally had to beg my gifted teacher, my administration, hey, can you please sign these papers? We have this deadline coming up. We need this paper signed. We need you to send this email. So really, you need to be proactive and keep working with them and keep your communication line open. Rely on your home support system. I would not have been able to do this without my family. My mom was the host house for a lot of our outside of school work sessions. So definitely be sure to rely on them and thank them for all that you do. And not everything is going to be important, or perfect. But it's important to keep going. So like I said, I had a lot of bumps in my road, but it was really important for me to stay focused and to believe in what I wanted to do. So thank you so much, and I'm excited to answer your questions in the Q&A section.
So our third speaker is Madeline.
Hi everyone, my name is Madeline and I'm a recent graduate of the Mechanical Engineering program at Cornell University. So I recently moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I'm about to start work next Monday as a medical device engineer. And I've been involved with SWE since my freshman year of college. So I served as the president of the Cornell SWE section my junior and senior year. And I'm also involved in the publications work group for SWENEX. So if you've ever got the SWE wisdom letter in the last year, I was the one who put all that together. So I'm excited to share with you a few tips that I've gained over the years about advocating myself. So Gisella, if you could pull those up, that would be great. So the story or example that I have is actually really similar to something that I heard Marquita share from one of your chat comments earlier about having to start a community service club and advocating for funds and resources. So as the president of the Cornell SWE section, I had to deal with that a lot. And this past semester, I was working on a project that the university had agreed to fund a portion of. And the project involved, we were writing a book, and the project involved hiring a student artist to help us with the book, and we had agreed to pay him for the work that he was doing. And I was in charge of coordinating all of the logistics between the artist and the university to make that payment go forward. And I had approval from the university, but they were being fairly unresponsive to my request to get further details. But again, I had that approval. We were working under a deadline. We wanted to finish it before we graduated. So I instructed the artist. I was like, go ahead, you can start working, making the decision that maybe this would be a kind of ask for forgiveness, not permission type situation. So a couple months later, when the artist had finally completed the work, I approached the university finance people. I showed them the work that had been done, and I asked them if we could move forward with his compensation. And they got very angry with me almost immediately and claimed that I hadn't properly followed any of their directions and that they wouldn't be paying the artist. So I knew in my gut that I had done the right thing, but I was also struggling, having had made these individuals angry. I generally like to be a people pleaser, and I was worried about the damage that it may cause to our organization's reputation in the eyes of the university. So I also knew that the artist had put in a lot of hard work for us and that he deserved to be compensated as we had agreed on. So I had a full paper trail showing that I had asked multiple times for further instructions and showing that they had given me the approval to move forward. And I went back and forth with this woman for multiple days by email trying to explain that we had prior approval and why I had moved forward with the project despite not having, or despite their lack of communication. And making no progress, I was feeling super frustrated, and I decided that it was time to kind of escalate the problem to help get some help. So I drafted some emails to our organization's advisors and had the other team members read over my drafts, which I always recommend doing. That's not one of my list of tips, but that's a good one. I explained the issue, admitted that I had proceeded without a fully green light, and asked for their help in working with the finance department. So these individuals are ones that I've developed relationships with over the last 4 years. They know that I have good intentions. They respect my leadership experience and my decision-making history. They were more than happy to intervene on my behalf. Each of them wrote emails to the women I was trying to deal with, supporting my decision and reiterating the need to move forward with this transaction. So while it took several weeks of follow-up emails and a few phone calls and what I felt like was nagging, I was able to push the project forward, and we were able to get the artist compensated. So it's super stressful to have my decision making be questioned, especially by higher up people. I hadn't really experienced that before, and received backlash from someone that I didn't have a lot of experience working with. But I stood by my decisions and found people to support me and people who made sure that my requests were being heard. So that kind of, in summary, leads me to these 3 tips of it's important when you're going to make an ask for something, whether that's in advocating for yourself or in kind of all aspects of life. If you're going to ask for something, you should kind of know what you want your desired outcome to be or what your specific needs are. And that can help you formulate your question and also be able to answer follow-up questions. Also finding your allies to help amplify your voice. In this case, this was our organization advisors who were able to kind of take it from a university employee to university employee level rather than like student employees. They were able to amplify my voice, but that can also be your friends. It can be your family, like we talked about before. Who are the people that know you well and know you help make sure your voice is being heard? And then my last piece is to be persistent. Sometimes it feels like nagging to send like email after email when you're not getting a response. You're just being like, hey, I wanted to make sure that you saw this. Hey, do you have any updates on this? Like, I know it's been a challenge for me to understand, like, you deserve to have an answer, and you're not nagging. This is their job to respond to you in this case. So be persistent and get the answers that you need, and make sure you have the right people around you to help. Those are my tips.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to share something that happened to one of our students in our institution. She was the only girl in the class, and you know that we just give the students a lot of, as a teacher here, a lot of projects and team work. She was not able to have anybody to help her with hers. She was basically being isolated. So she decided to go ahead and talk to them and see what was going on. She couldn't make any progress, so she decided to go again and see a faculty or a staff that would help her. And then she found the right person to talk to people that would actually make a difference. Especially during the first years of college, there's a lot of things that go bad because people are not taken accountable, so they don't suffer the consequences of their actions. And it's important for people, for students to share those things with us so we can make a difference. Anything that prevents a good environment for learning, and sometimes a personal level as well, we have the responsibility to take care of you, even during college. So things got better for her because obviously they had to be held accountable. And what happened next in the following semester was that some girls heard the story because she spoke up, and they decided to have classes with her. So she had like this group of support for the following classes. Some of the boys improved their behavior. It's not everything perfect yet, but we're working hard on it. And I'm just going to share some tips before we start our Q&A session. So follow your instinct. If something does not feel right, it is probably not right. So please trust yourself. Speak up. Don't be afraid of doing so. And if you feel uncomfortable with it, just know that you're never alone. Find the right ally. It could be a counselor, it could be an ombudsperson, it could be the coach, it could be your parent, your peer, your teacher. There's always somebody that can help you. And practice, 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 because that makes perfect. So without further ado, we can go to our Q&A session now.
Awesome. Well, these stories were amazing to hear from our wonderful panel. I think that all of us have gleaned a little bit of extra knowledge on what we can do, and also just learning from your experience. You guys rock on how you handled your individual experiences. So I am Marquita Riley again from HQ. I am going to go ahead and enter into our Q&A portion with the panel. Again, please use the chat function to send your questions in, and we'll try to get as many as answered as possible. If we don't have time for your questions, we'll make sure to connect you with the speaker, Gisella, or the panel if it's specific to one of our panelists as well after the session is over. Okay, so I'm going to start with some questions that we got in the chat right now, and then I'll go into some of the ones that we had for the registration questions to our panelists. So I'm gonna give this question to Emily. Ava asked the question, going into STEM, and this actually could be Emily and Yabesra, going along in STEM and STEM projects, I feel as though my male classmates don't value my work on an equal level as theirs, like Yabesra's story. How do you stand up to that, and what do you say?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I think it's really important in that situation to bring in a teacher or an outside mentor and say, look, I'm doing this work, he's doing this work, and just show kind of, even like Madeline said, your receipts and your paper trails of what you had and what you've been doing. And maybe that mentor can really help even it out, even if it's taking them aside and saying, hey, she's doing this work, or try to be nice there and kind of be equal with that.
Okay, I have another question, and I think it actually also comes from Ava as well. I'm going to give this to Madeline. How do you overcome the fear of backlash when advocating for yourself?
Yeah, that's certainly hard, and I don't think I've necessarily mastered it too. Kind of when I was telling my story, all of this was, we had been sent home from college. So this was all happening over email from home, and I was certainly, it made me really anxious to like be getting these emails of definitely angry people. And I think that it was voicing that frustration and that anxiety to those like allies, those mentors that I had talked about before, and just getting like their reassurance that like, no, you're doing the right thing. They can't like, they're not, nothing's bad is really going to happen. Like, what's the worst they can do? And certainly like thinking about that of like, okay, yeah, like I'm about to graduate. There's not, even if I wasn't graduating, like someone might be angry, but like that's not necessarily going to impact you, and you just need to like get the help you need to like resolve the issue. So I think asking yourself like, well, what's the worst case scenario, and a lot of times that helps you and I even write those down sometimes of like, what are all the outcomes that this could have, and realizing like, oh, the way that my brain is thinking that like this might turn out is way worse than like the worst thing that could happen. So I think like thinking through that certainly helps to mollify the fear, but I'm not going to say that that's something easy to overcome. And I mean, how many years later, and I still struggle with that sometimes.
So yeah, you hear it here first. It's an ongoing battle. Everybody is still figuring out the way to advocate for themselves. So it's no perfect science. It's really, what I'm hearing is that you just have to try. So that's the biggest thing. So I have a couple more questions that actually came in through our registrations. I wanted to kind of discuss them. I'm going to give this question to Gisella. How do I effectively make my point across without seeming confrontational or aggressive?
There are some words that we can use and you can start practicing that don't sound too bossy. For example, if you want somebody to clarify something, it's always nice to start with something like, can you help me understand, or help me understand what's going on here? There are some like passive aggressive words that you can use.
I think
Help
it's
me
also,
understand always works.
I think it's also important to note that like there's these are very like gendered terms in terms of who they're generally applied to, and like being bossy is something that often like women are called, but men aren't, but men are the ones who are like succeeding. So I would think about like, what are the like hidden meanings kind of behind those words, and if it's an issue of you're being called bossy when you're doing the same thing as some counterparts, then that's the time to advocate for yourself and be like, hey, this is not okay. People think I'm coming off as aggressive and aren't treating me the same when I'm asserting myself in the same way as those around me. So you're not necessarily kind of like in the wrong, and you should still be strong and confident and not be afraid to voice your opinion.
Yabesra, I wanted to give you that same question. What do you think about a way to effectively get your point across without seeming confrontational or aggressive?
I think that it's important to have your main message or your thought process like already thought about beforehand, because if you do it immediately after it happens, sometimes you can be way madder than you'd want to be. So taking a minute to just step back, think about what just happened and how you feel and what you want to tell someone, because when you're advocating for yourself, it's important that you let somebody else know what's happening, because people unintentionally do things. It's happened many times, and it's just because in our culture it's ingrained to do some things, and it's not necessarily a good thing, and they'll do it without realizing. And you can just take a minute to step back and be like, hold up, that wasn't good. Like, I don't agree with that, and then explain why you don't agree with that. And typically women who are more assertive or who have gone like farther places, they're in like management positions, are considered bossier or like ruder or very like assertive. And just like Madeline said, it just has to do with some of like gender stereotypes. And like she said, it's good to advocate for yourself at that moment, because if a person is thinking that way, then you need to advocate for not only you, but on behalf of all women in the country, because whatever that person's thinking is also negatively affecting other people around them. It could be their daughter, their sister, whoever it is. By you advocating for yourself, you're also advocating on behalf of every other girl. So it's important to understand like when it's like, not okay, and just say what you need to say.
Well said. I have a question that just came in from Michaela. I want to go to college that has mostly male students in the program, and I am worried about my opinions being drowned out. So how can I make my success known and not drown out my male peers? I'm going to give this question to Emily.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm an electrical engineer, and at pretty much with 5 girls in the whole grade. So it's really just finding your core group of people that you want to spend your time with. So I have one really good girlfriend from SWE actually that we have classes together, but also finding those male peers that also are advocates for SWE and for women, and it's just really good people that you want to find to be your friends. So I think it's definitely doable to have a positive outcome in that situation. I'm definitely living through it and very happy.
Okay, so I think we have 2 more questions, and then I'm going to wrap up our Q&A. The last question that I think I've seen quite often is a question regarding how to advocate for themselves with teachers or band directors. I had one that also talked about retesting for an exam, and they just wanted to know how do I get the help that I need when I'm having a hard time with online coursework? How do I get the help that I need? And I'm going to give this question to Madeline.
Yeah, so I think that one, if a teacher has offered help and been like, okay, I've been out of high school for a while now, so I don't remember, I don't know exactly how online high school is working, but if a teacher has offered like office hours or been like, hey, if you need some extra help on this, like email me and we can set up a time to meet, I think certainly do that. I know there's it might feel little weird to do it over video rather than like if you stop by their classroom, but kind of that's the new normal. That's what we're all adjusting to. And you just have to those who ask for help and are not or those who ask for help are the ones who are ultimately going to do better in the end. If you're covering up the fact that you need help, you're not going to get better. So yes, I think if it's offered, asking for it. If you feel like you need help, but you don't know the resources that are available for you, or if a teacher that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with hasn't offered it, then I would go to a teacher or a mentor or someone else at school, or even if it's your parents, and say, hey, I feel like I need extra help with this, but I don't know where to go or what to do. Again, if it's an adult, they might have more kind of eyes in the system, and they might be able to direct you to the right person, or even if that they work with that teacher, they might be able to send them in like, hey, I hear one of your students maybe looking for some extra help, maybe the teacher could reach out or something like that. So I think just asking, and if you don't feel comfortable asking in a specific teacher, try to feel comfortable or find someone who you do feel comfortable asking.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, we did one. Yeah,
I wanted to add on. So now that it's online and you can't directly go to the teacher to inform them, I think that it's important to get that teacher's email or whoever you want to talk to, and then if they've offered for help, send them an email. If you don't get a reply within a couple of days, because sometimes it does take some amount of time for them to reply, then send them another email. And if they're not replying to any of your emails, you need to, during class, hold them accountable for that. Near the end, you got to be like, hey, hold up, before we leave, I just want to understand what's happening, why am I not getting any responses? Because now with everything going virtual, your teachers are going to get constant emails from a lot of students, and it's going to be hard for them to track everything down. but they will do their best to, help you out and everything. It's just sometimes, they have kids sometimes, and they have other, priorities in their lives that may get them like caught up. And if they can't immediately get to you, you need to advocate for yourself by getting to them. I think Madeline said this earlier, but nagging isn't a bad thing. You need to constantly be like, "Hey, I need help. I need help. I need help." Some kids, if they're not, able to go to a teacher, there are so many online resources now that you can use for free. You can even talk to your friends, setting up groups where you're like, "Hey, if everyone's lost in this class, you can talk to each other." That's really good. And just finding ways to fix a solution is very important. And for that solution, I would just say reaching out to people or reaching out online for yourself is very important. This is a really good example of self-advocacy. So yeah, just make sure you take the time to reach out.
Gisella, I think you have a lot to offer as a lecturer. What is your opinion on the nagging concept, but also being able to advocate for yourself when you have a situation like this?
I'm very responsive, I'm sorry. No, I just remember by what she was saying. It's like I got an email from a student needing help, and I was at Bruno Mars concert. But I think it's okay that I waited 2 hours to reply. But yeah, just ask your professors. They should be, helping you all the time.
What
And
happens
I do my best.
What happens if a teacher doesn't listen? Like, say you're like doing everything like your professor has suggested and just going at it, and you're getting there's nothing happening there. What happens then?
It depends on, for colleges, I guess what helps is the ombudsperson. The ombudsperson fixes everything, everything. For high school, you probably have a counselor, somebody that will help you through it as well.
Okay, so I think that is going to be all the questions we can take for today. We are at 4:49. Thank you all for participating in the Q&A, and I would like to thank our panelists for answering those questions as well. I think this was very good of a discussion that everybody could take something away from. So I want to make sure that nothing is missed. So I will say again, if you have any additional questions that you might have for Gisella or our panelists, be sure to follow up with us at HQ, and we'll connect you to them so that we can get those questions answered after the session. So we've reached the end of our time together, and at this time, I would like to ask you to complete a survey located in the chat box. It's also available on this page here. If you see, there's a nice little QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. If you have your cell phones handy, all you have to do is just go ahead and get that QR code, and it'll link you to our Survey Monkey for our post a survey. And I've also made it available within the chat box as well, so you can follow that link there too. I'd like to thank again our speakers and everyone for tuning in and attending our Techniques for Advocating for Yourself webinar today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at swenex@swe.org or post your questions in the SweNext TV Google Classroom, which will be made available to you when we send a follow-up email. Also, an on-demand recording of this webinar will be made available in that classroom, so we will be sending you any additional details that you might need or information after this session. All righty. Well, thank you all for participating. I appreciate each and every one of you all. I really love that you all were transparent in sharing your stories, as well as our panelists. And I would like to wish you all a good rest of your day. Thank you.